and welcome. This is Julie Smith. I'm Julie Smith, and this is Charlie King, and we are, wow, I can't believe this is week 4. We've been here for the past 4 weeks, really talking about topics that touch parents and caring adults around teens and what that means. Gosh, Charlie, can you believe how fast it's gone the past month?
It's actually been pretty amazing. And I think half of it has been because it's so much fun, and B, we keep talking about topics where you'll say something and I'll go, oh my God, me too. Because we don't, like for those of you who are watching, we don't script this out beforehand. We come up with a topic and then we throw stuff at the wall, see how it sticks, and we go back and forth. And it's just funny to see the sort of the juxtaposition or the opposites or even where we line up, and just being able to quietly go, oh, me too, is pretty fun.
Yes. In fact, I think our prep work is usually laughter. That's about as far as we seem to get. A couple texts here and there, and we're like, oh yeah, that's good. And then we start the Me Too's, and then it's something about, oh yeah, and then we just end up laughing. So it's been fun, and it's gone by so fast. And I love today's topic. And before we get into that, what I wanted to just share real quick, because we're showing up on my stream. And the first 2 weeks we did this, we showed up on Charlie's stream, and then last week we were on mine. And so for those of you just tuning in, Charlie is the creator of Heroic Fatherhood, which is a fantastic resource for dads to come together and have conversations. And before we jump into our topic today, can you just share a little bit more about yourself and Heroic Fatherhood for those watching?
Yeah, well, the important part is I live in Seattle, Washington. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Jamie. We've been married 21 years now. This is our 21st year of marriage. We have 2 kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter who's a rower, and I have a 14-year-old boy who's a water polo player. I think that's what we're doing there for that. That's the symbol for it.
That works.
And I'm the founder of Heroic Fatherhood. So I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm a program leader, and I create opportunities for dads to get together and really figure out what's most important to them. And it's really easy as a guy to show up and feel like your job is to be responsible for everything. You're supposed to figure it out all by yourself. You're the guy who, like men do it alone, and I'm going to fix that thing all by myself. And it can create this really sense that you're all by yourself. And so what I try and do, or what my work is around like bringing men together to be able to talk about the issues that men are really facing, about like feelings of not measuring up, or leaning on the wisdom of other men, right? Like we always talk about wise elders, and we talk about leaning on the wisdom of other men about what they do with their parenting, how they manage difficult times in relationship, like what they do with their, like where their gaps are in the way that they perceive themselves as men, as fathers, and as partners in parenting.
I love that. And I think that's such a powerful place to be. And I think, and that's where we connected, because I'm a parent of teens as well. And I also work with parents and other caring adults. And one of the things that's so important is not just how we talk a lot right in here about how we're responding to our teens, but also how we show up as parents, but as people. And I think that's so powerful. And for those of you that are new to me, like I said, I am also a parent of teens, and I have 3. I can't believe I have 3 of them. I have 14, 15, and 17. So you and I are both in the thick of it for sure. And I'm also a licensed adolescent therapist and the creator of What to Do When, because, when you deal with teens, you're starting to realize it's no longer a matter of if things come into their life, it's a matter of when. And the past 4 weeks, we've touched on a lot of different conversations, and our process has been, we talk about 20-ish minutes, and then we open it up for questions. So if you have them, post them. But our topics have been covering, we've talked about parenting from our own teen years. We've talked about, just being partners with our kids. just what those teen years look like, the communication. And today what we're talking about is not fixing it, and really just like coming into this, that there doesn't always have to be that problem. And we had bounced a few ideas off, and Charlie, you had come up with this great, question you were asking me that I think is a fantastic place for us to start.
Cool. You remember what that question was?
I do. I think you remember too.
So the question sort of is like, what, in every family, in every community, I don't know anybody that doesn't at some point look at either a family that they're connected to through the kid's school, or a family, or a parent or a child, and use that as a comparison to see how they're doing with their parenting or how their child's doing, right? Like you may be in a community of high achievers where you see kids who are going off to Ivy League schools and got that scholarship, or the family is doing that work with the relief effort in blah, blah, blah country where they've raised all that money, or they're, excelling in these 37 different areas. And suddenly it can be really easy to suddenly go, oh, wow, we don't seem to be doing that. And that seems super attractive. I wonder what's wrong, or I wonder what's missing, or why don't we have that going on?
Well, and, we were using the term Me Too before. And I think that often, whether as parents and just as people, we show up in this space of either comparing ourselves or feeling that connection of Me Too. And when we are in comparison, we can't really be in that space of connection. And, that's true with us as parents, how we look at ourselves with our peers. It's true with our kids and how we're connecting with them. And when we're in that place of comparison, we really feel like, I think there's a sense of, oh, I'm not enough and I'm a problem, or my kids are a problem, or there is a problem somewhere that needs to be fixed. And that's couldn't be further from the truth, but it's really easy to fall into that trap of there's a problem here.
Yep, absolutely. And we're always, and it's like inherent in who we are as parents, right? Like, as a committed parent, the only thing you want for your children is the best possible. So you keep your eye out, and we learn incredibly wonderful things from what other people are doing. And, how many times have I sat with another parent and I've been like, I'm really struggling with X, and somebody will say, oh yeah, I totally get it. We struggle with that too. We did something that was kind of unique. I'll share it with you, and people will share something with me and be like, oh my gosh, I want to bring that home and try that out at home. And that's a healthy way to sort of like use resources around you. Where it gets a little sticky, and maybe more than a little sticky, is when we have this tendency to take a look at other people and sort of project that, like our life on somebody else's.
Right.
And I think that's where we start to get in trouble, because it like, as human beings, we're comparison making machines, right? Mm-hmm. We're like, well, this apple looks better than this apple, so I'm going to buy this apple. So we're comparison making machines. It goes back to our very core wiring of who we were back in prehistoric times. It was the way we kept ourselves safe. It was the way that we kept ourselves alive. And it served us then, and it still serves us to a certain extent today. We look at a stop sign, and if it's red, or a crosswalk, if it's red, we don't go. And if it's green, we do go. Mm-hmm. But we have to be able to compare the two.
Right.
That's totally appropriate use of a comparison. Where it gets a little sticky is when we start comparing apples to oranges. Like when we look at somebody else's circumstances and map that somehow onto our lives. Mm-hmm. And where we get into trouble with that is we start to make it appear, it can easily appear like there's something wrong or something that needs fixing.
Right.
And please.
Oh, I apologize. I was going to say that I think that's such a brilliant example, because we do have to compare. This is red, this is green, go, stop. That is healthy and that is normal. It's when we collapse someone else's story and our story, and we feel that that there is a problem, or that it's an unfixable problem. And I think it's beyond just the situation being the problem. We begin to see ourselves as a problem. And people cannot be problems. People have problems, but people are not problems. And we get caught in that trap. And it's that cycle is really difficult to pull yourself out of when you're in there, of seeing yourself as that problem. And the comparisons of apples and oranges, or someone else's story with your story, keeps you in that loop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it robs us of the opportunity to acknowledge it robs us of the beauty and the opportunity to acknowledge that we have amazing kids who are in this growing process, and everybody develops at a different age, and everybody gets things at a different time. And because one thing works for, one thing shows up for one family, or one thing shows up for one teen, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show up for yours, nor does it mean it's the right thing to show up. And, the analogy I like to use is it's really easy for us we look at other people's lives, whether we look at other teens or other families' lives. And when we see it, what we see is what we call the highlight reel, which is like a movie trailer. So if you're a fan of a movie trailer, I'm a big fan of movie trailers. Like, I can watch them all day long. But if you watch movie trailers, they are the best of the best. Have you ever watched a movie trailer where the movie trailer is better than the movie? Mm-hmm. So you see the movie trailer, which is 2 minutes of the best parts of the movie, and then you go see the whole movie and you're like, the trailer was better than the movie. And that's what we see, is we see people's trailers. When we look in our own lives, all we see is the behind the scenes footage, that sort of grainy, off camera, you get to see the dysfunction of the leading actor and actress, and the sniping of the director and and the producer. And that's all we see. But when we look outside of us, we see nothing but the highlight trailer. And it's part of the way that we're wired. We want to see our existence outside of us in the best possible light. And right. So it's super important that we be aware that our kids are going to develop at different speeds and in different ways, and they're not going to look like anybody else. They're going to look like our teens and our kids. And the more that we can lean into you're perfect, whole, and complete, just the way you are, the more they can ease into themselves, and they can come out into young adulthood feeling like they can do anything they want because there's nothing missing in them. There's no gap. There's nowhere to go. They're right where they're supposed to be.
I love that so much. And the thought that kept coming up is, when you can appreciate the highlight reel for what it is, and you can appreciate the behind the scenes for what that is, it really allows you to step into those moments of the blooper reel, which is where everybody laughs and has fun. Everybody loves those end of the movies, the blooper reel, where things are silly and goofy. So when if you can just pull out those pieces and know that, yeah, we all have a little bit of a highlight reel, we all have behind the scenes, and we all have bloopers, and that's okay. There's not just one, because they all are important to have in our lives and with our kids. And you said something else that was really important, is that because something happens for one kiddo, if they might have a certain experience or they're introduced to something, it doesn't mean that it is going to be the same for all kids. And that is the one thing that I think we see often, and you've experienced that, and I've experienced that, where, we often hear these statements of, well, I hear everybody's doing drugs, or everybody's ditching class, or everybody's doing this, so there's a problem. Yes, there's, there can be drug problems or communication problems. There are these problems out there, but it doesn't mean that every kid's experiencing it in the same way. It doesn't mean that your own child is falling victim to these things. What it means is that there is space and there's room to have conversations. And that's when a problem isn't, you're not sitting there trying to kind of fixating on that problem and focusing on that. You're really looking at the person. And that's, one of the things that I feel so strongly about, is really pulling those problems away from being seen as the person and the problem, two separate things. And I think when we get into comparison, we get into generalizations, we tend to group people as problems, and often teens.
Yep. Yep. And that's I work, I don't work. I volunteer as a chaperone for both my kids' teams. And it's really critical. And what I notice is the most success I've ever gotten is by consistently interacting with the athletes one at a time as individuals who are, fully responsible for themselves and not in any relationship to any other. Mm-hmm. And pulling them aside and having a conversation with them as, a solution oriented, looking at them as an individual, not trying to create them as a you group of, problem X, or, you all can't be doing that, as opposed to the specifically the one person or the one thing, being really intentional, right? And so I think that that's what I'm stumbling on. Don't mind me, because it feels like I'm stumbling. Is like stumbling on like just speaking to what is, as opposed to what we think might be, right? Yes.
I'm going to write that down, because I think we all get caught up in that. We stumble on, and I'm going to use stumble. We stumble around what is. I'm putting this in our comments because I think this is such a great nugget, versus what we think it is.
Right. And where I'll run into other chaperones who'll be like, well, we have a problem. And I say, great, tell me what the problem is. Cause because I seem to be the guy they come to, and they're like, well, they're all doing X. And I'm like, well, who's the they? The kids. Great. Which one?
Right.
And what exactly are they doing? Well, I think they're getting in trouble. Great. Specifically whom, and what are they doing? Like, right. if there's nothing to address from they, like there's nothing to address about you all are being bad, right? Mm-hmm. Like there is, when we can say, okay, there appears to be a gap. There's, we have an intention of going this direction as a family, as a chaperone, or we're all going this direction. And what I notice is the following, is that, you're not taking time for homework, or, that you're staying up later, or that we have an agreement about the way you're to use your phone, and you're choosing not to use your phone that way, and you're choosing to use it outside of that. And we need to find a new way or a new solution. When we can consistently look at what is it we're actually talking about? Is it a measurable thing? Did you see something? Is there a measurable, tangible thing that we're actually addressing? And then to whom are we addressing it? So as opposed to just making it about the kids, it's like, why aren't you doing better in school? And you're like, well, I thought I was doing fine in school. I've been telling you about my grades. Well, I know. Well, I saw Susie, and Susie seems to be doing X. Well, there's nothing to say to that, right? Like if you're a teen and a parent comes to you about that and compares you to another student, there's nothing to do, and it leaves you in this place where you can feel hopeless, you can feel helpless and powerless, because it's an impression that has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the person making the comparison and somebody you're not.
Right. And when kids hear that, when teens hear that, they instantly feel that sense of judgment and that they aren't enough. It's not a me too, it's an I'm not enough. And one of the simplest shifts we all can make when we start saying, well, so-and-so is doing this, why aren't you doing this, is changing the word why to what. And you did it when you were just talking. You're like, I asked these other chaperones, well, what's going on? Who is it? And that shift to the who, the what, the where is very different than why. Why is a very judgment-ridden word. It's, well, why didn't you do that? It immediately can put kids on the defensive of, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm not like Susie. I don't know why I'm not cleaning my room. I don't know why I'm on my phone. I don't have an answer. And it makes them feel a lot of shame. And that's when they start to identify as a problem. And so simple shifts with just our languaging, being aware, are you noticing what Susie's doing more than what your own child's doing? if that's happening, you may be parenting the child you're hoping to have rather than the one you have. And that's a big awareness for most parents, or a really powerful awareness. And then it's those simple shifts of words, should, you should be doing this. You should change this. Makes it feel like there's a problem. Should and why. Those words are heavy feeling words. And I don't know about you, Charlie, but whenever somebody's like, oh, you should be doing this, I'm like, oh, well, yeah, I should be, but I'm not. And now I feel terrible. My head drops down. I'm like, I can't. What did I do now? I've screwed up. And now look at everybody else. They're doing it. Why? And that's the dialogue that gets caught in our heads as parents. And that's the dialogue that gets caught up in our own kids, in their heads as well. And so if we can make these simple shifts, we can have more opportunities, like we said, not to compare, but to connect on this very more authentic way.
Yeah. And and for me, and this is really the core of my work, whether with dads or with teens or anywhere else, is if you come from a place that people, including yourself, are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way they are, it opens up an opportunity for a conversation and takes away judgment. It opens up an opportunity for empathy, a conversation for openness, a sharing of, transparency or vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
I notice that I'm concerned about your grades because they're not where we agreed we had a benchmark for them. And I haven't figured out how to support you so that we could get on track. And I'm, feeling nervous about having this conversation with you, but I feel like it's important that we have it.
I love that. And I want to pause on that because I think what you just said wraps up this whole piece so well of when we can come together as whole and complete, and it's who we are right now in this moment. That's where the connection happens. That's where the conversations happen. That's where the exploration happens, rather than labeling it as a problem or feel like it's something to have to fix. It's just something to explore and discover about one another. And that's, when you have teenagers, that's really the process of parenting them. There's so much exploration of ourselves and of them, and they are also exploring their own thoughts and feelings as well along that journey.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And I think that the last thing I would share is that we have to, it sort of raises the onus that we be responsible for where we're coming from when we're talking with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Check in with yourself first before you open your mouth, right? Like, where am I coming from right now? Am I tired? Am I frustrated? Did I just get exposed to something and now I feel all amped up or sad and now I feel like I have to do something? Like, where am I standing right now? Mm-hmm. And if you're standing at anything other than sort of gratitude or an understanding that your kid's on this wild journey called teenager years, you may want to take a few breaths. And I've certainly been down that street, and I've certainly opened my mouth when I needed to keep it closed, and just go, oh, all right. So I'm going to take a couple breaths, see if I can figure out where I'm coming from, and see if I can come from somewhere else, right? Like, we get to choose where we come from when we have conversations with our kids, and they're beautiful and they're amazing, and we want to have a relationship with them for the rest of our lives. And we get this sort of 18 years to really cement that. And beyond that, our amount of contact that we have with them is going to be as much about our choice as it is theirs. I know dads often and moms often joke, well, they'll keep coming around as long as I keep doing the laundry, filling the pantry, and, paying for vacations. To a certain extent, that's true. But to have long-term, intimate, supportive, wonderful relationships with your kids takes work, and not later, but now.
I agree. And I think that's a wonderful place to wrap this up, because one of the, I think it's important to always have a takeaway from these exchanges, and to just know that it's not about being perfect. There is no perfect. It's just about being yourself and to pause. And when you are starting a conversation, take that breath. And we do that even before we start these calls. We're like today, we're like, let's take a deep breath. Let's get here. And there's, we both have so much going on, and whether it's through work or family, or we both have been traveling a lot, it's pausing and grounding yourself in that moment and owning where you're at and seeing the person before you and connecting there. And I will say there's those moments where we do have that. We're coming in from a different place where we are tired, we're frustrated, we forget to do that pause. And that's okay too. Just accept that, own that and accept that, yeah, I did that and I'm sorry. And again, take that breath and connect from that place. And I know for me, it's been a pleasure connecting with you the past 4 weeks, and to all of you out there. This was our experiment and conversations, and it's been really fun, and we'd love to hear more from you. If you have questions or if you have comments, just keeping the conversations going and keeping the connections going with each other and with one another. I think that's such an important piece. And as we kind of wrap up this series, I'd love to know any thoughts that you have, Charlie, that you want to share.
Well, I think that parenting is not unlike what you and I've been doing the last 4 weeks, because parenting just lives in a conversation. Mm-hmm. Parenting and relationships live in conversation, and it's when we keep the window to conversation open, the window to sharing, the window for contribution, that our teens can contribute to us and we can contribute to them. Whether we do that contribution in, sometimes contribution is silence, where we're not providing them direction, insight, feedback, And sometimes it's noticing where they're having struggles or problems, mm-hmm. or where they're excited about something. But when we open up the window of relationship and the window of communication, that's where relationship is built. That's when they know that when things go sideways, that they can come to us, and that they don't need to hide themselves or any part of themselves from us. Mm-hmm. And that, when they get to see that we're human too, and we screw up too, and we have days where we're sad or we're frustrated or things are not going the way we expect, that's powerful stuff. That's mm-hmm. powerful stuff. And that's the kind of legacy that we get to create, because they're going to expect that from adults. They're going to expect that from partners, and they're going to parent that way for their kids as well.
That I don't think I could. That was beautiful, and I don't think I could have wrapped it up any better. And I love this idea that parenting and relationships they live in conversations. And so I invite anyone watching to, let's keep the conversation going with me, with Charlie, with the two of us. Where can people find you, Charlie?
They can find me over on the Heroic Fatherhood Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Heroic Fatherhood. You can find me on the Heroic Fatherhood website. I have a YouTube channel, Heroic Fatherhood. Of course, I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. The only thing that's different about Twitter is it's at Heroic Fathers. The username has to be shorter.
Yeah, that's right. And you can always find me here on Facebook, as well as really every social media platform at ITS Julie Smith, and online at juliesmith.com. And we welcome additional questions, comments, and let's keep this conversation going. And until next time, I'm Julie Smith, and this is...
I'm Charlie King, and I just wanted to thank you, Julie, for opening up this conversation, because it's so great. And I know that we both get to be with communities of really caring, intentional parents. And we can be caring and intentional parents and still struggle sometimes. And we can be intentional and, putting our our shoulder behind the wheel and still find ourselves feeling like we're falling short.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just this big fat journey we're all on. And I just want to thank you for inviting me to be part of it with your group.
Well, thank you. That now I've got hit with the case of the feels. Oh, and thank you. I appreciate this so much. We've had so much fun. We talked earlier about like the behind the scenes. You and I, just we have a shared weird sense of humor, and I do appreciate that on so many levels. So thank you. I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to us chatting more as well, and just sharing on this level and going forward in life, in parenting, and business, and everything.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting us into your home, and we'll see you on the interweb, if not in person, one of these days.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.